The year was 1688, and England stood on the precipice of change. The air was thick with tension, whispers of discontent, and the faint scent of rebellion. King James II, a Catholic monarch ruling over a predominantly Protestant nation, had long been a source of unease for his subjects. His policies, perceived as favoring Catholics, had alienated many, including the powerful Protestant nobility. But it was not just his faith that stirred the pot of discontent. It was his actions, his alliances, and the rumors that swirled around his court like a tempest. The Glorious Revolution, as it would later be called, was not merely a political upheaval. It was a scandalous drama that unfolded in the corridors of power, where ambition, betrayal, and secrets threatened to tear the nation apart. This is the story of those scandals, the hidden truths that fueled the flames of revolution. The king's favour in the heart of London, within the opulent walls of Whitehall Palace. King James II held court. His reign had been marked by a series of controversial decisions, but none more so than his appointment of Catholics to high-ranking positions within the government and the military. This blatant disregard for the Test Acts, which barred Catholics from public office, had angered many. Yet it was not just his policies that raised eyebrows, it was the company he kept. Among the king's closest confidants was Robert Spencer, the Earl of Sunderland. A man of cunning and ambition, Sunderland had managed to ingratiate himself with the king, despite his own Protestant background. Whispers of his duplicity were rampant, with many accusing him of being a turncoat who would do anything to maintain his position of power. It was said that Sunderland had secretly converted to Catholicism to curry favour with the king, though he publicly denied it. His influence over James was undeniable, and many believed he was the true power behind the throne. But Sunderland was not the only one who had caught the king's eye. There was also the matter of the king's mistress, Catherine Sedley. A woman of sharp wit and undeniable charm, Catherine had become a fixture at court, much to the dismay of the Queen, Mary of Modena. The Queen, a devout Catholic, had long tolerated her husband's infidelities, but Catherine's presence was a constant source of scandal. Rumors swirled that the king was planning to legitimize their illegitimate child, a move that would threaten the succession and further alienate the Protestant nobility. The secret correspondence. As tensions mounted, a secret correspondence began to circulate among the disaffected nobility. Letters written in code and passed through trusted intermediaries revealed a growing conspiracy to overthrow the king. At the center of this web of intrigue was William of Orange, the Protestant husband of James's daughter, Mary. William, the stadtholder of the Dutch Republic, had long been seen as a potential savior by those who opposed James's rule. The letters spoke of plans to invite William to invade England and claim the throne. Among the conspirators were some of the most powerful men in the kingdom, including the Earl of Danby, the Bishop of London, and even members of the king's own family. The risk was immense, for treason was punishable by death, but the stakes were too high to ignore. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a letter written by the Earl of Danby to William of Orange. In it, Danby outlined the growing discontent within England and assured William that he would have the support of the nobility if he were to make a move against James. The letter was intercepted by the king's agents, but not before it had reached its intended recipient. James, furious and paranoid, began to tighten his grip on power, further alienating those who might have remained loyal. The birth of an heir in June 1688, the scandal that would ultimately tip the scales, occurred. Queen Mary of Modena gave birth to a son, James Francis Edward Stuart. The birth of a male heir, a Catholic heir, was a disaster for those who had hoped that James's Protestant daughters, Mary and Anne, would eventually succeed him. Almost immediately, rumors began to spread that the child was not the king's son at all, but a changeling smuggled into the queen's bedchamber in a warming pan. The rumors were fueled by the fact that the birth had been witnessed by only a handful of people, all of whom were loyal to the king. The Protestant nobility, already suspicious of James's intentions, seized upon this as evidence of a grand conspiracy to ensure a Catholic succession. Pamphlets and broadsheets circulated throughout London, spreading the scandalous tale and further eroding the king's legitimacy. The gathering storm. By the autumn of 1688, the stage was set for revolution. William of Orange, emboldened by the support of the English nobility, began to assemble an invasion force. The king, meanwhile, grew increasingly isolated, his paranoia driving him to make rash decisions. He purged the army of Protestant officers, further alienating the military, and attempted to suppress dissent through force. But it was too late. The scandals that had plagued his reign The favoritism, the infidelity, the rumors of a false heir had done their damage. The Glorious Revolution was not just a political movement, it was a reckoning, a moment when the secrets and lies that had festered beneath the surface of English society finally came to light. As William's fleet set sail for England, the nation held its breath. The seeds of scandal had been sown, and now the harvest was at hand. The Glorious Revolution was about to begin, and with it, the downfall of a king. The autumn of 1688 was a season of unease. The winds that swept across the English Channel carried not only the chill of impending winter, but also the whispers of rebellion. William of Orange, the Protestant stadtholder of the Dutch Republic, had set his sights on England. His fleet, a formidable force of over 400 ships, was poised to cross the waters and challenge the rule of King James II. The Glorious Revolution was no longer a distant possibility. It was a reality, fueled by scandal, ambition, and the desperate hope for change. The Dutch Armada, William's invasion force, was a spectacle to behold. Nearly 15,000 soldiers, sailors, and mercenaries from across Europe had been assembled, their banners fluttering in the coastal wind. The Dutch fleet, laden with supplies and artillery, was a symbol of Protestant defiance against the Catholic monarchy of England. William's flagship, the Den Brail, led the armada, its decks crowded with officers and advisors who had spent months planning the invasion. The decision to invade had not been made lightly. William had received assurances from key English nobles that his arrival would be met with widespread support. The so-called Immortal Seven, a group of influential Englishmen, including the Earl of Shrewsbury, the Bishop of London, and Henry Sidney, had sent a formal invitation to William, urging him to intervene and protect the Protestant faith in England. They promised that the nation would rise in his favour, and that James II's reign would crumble under the weight of its own scandals. But as the fleet set sail, doubts lingered. The English Channel was treacherous, and the Royal Navy, though weakened by James's purges of Protestant officers, was still a formidable force. A storm could scatter the Dutch ships, or worse, the English might rally to their king. William knew that his success depended not only on military might, the king's denial. In London, King James II remained strangely complacent. Despite warnings from his advisors, he refused to believe that William would actually invade. His confidence was bolstered by the birth of his son, James Francis Edward Stuart, whom he saw as a divine sign of the continuation of his Catholic dynasty. The rumors of the child being a warming pan baby had only strengthened his resolve to prove his legitimacy. But James's court was a nest of intrigue. His closest advisors, including the Earl of Sunderland, were secretly working against him. Sunderland, ever the opportunist, had begun to distance himself from the king, sensing that the tide was turning. He fed James false assurances, downplaying the threat of invasion and encouraging him to focus on consolidating his power at home. Meanwhile, the Queen, Mary of Modena, grew increasingly anxious. She had become a target of public scorn, her every move scrutinized and criticized. The birth of her son, which should have been a moment of triumph, had only deepened the scandal surrounding the royal family. She pleaded with James to take the threat of invasion seriously, but her warnings fell on deaf ears. The landing at Torbay. On November 5th, 1688, William's fleet arrived off the coast of Devon. The landing at Torbay was a masterstroke of strategy. The English defences were weak, and the local population, largely Protestant and sympathetic to William's cause, offered little resistance. As the Dutch troops disembarked, they were greeted not with hostility, but with cautious curiosity. William himself made a grand entrance, riding a white horse and dressed in the colours of the English flag. He issued a proclamation declaring that he had come not to conquer England, but to protect its liberties and the Protestant faith. His words were carefully crafted to appeal to the English people, many of whom had grown disillusioned with James's rule. News of the landing spread like wildfire. In London, panic gripped the royal court. James, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, scrambled to rally his forces. But his efforts were hampered by desertions and defections. Key members of the army, including John Churchill, the future Duke of Marlborough, abandoned the king and pledged their loyalty to William. Even James's own daughter, Princess Anne, fled the capital to join the rebels. The flight of the king. As William's forces advanced, James' position grew increasingly untenable. His attempts to negotiate with William were met with cold indifference. The Dutch prince had no intention of sharing power. His goal was nothing less than the throne of England. By mid-December, James found himself isolated and betrayed. His advisors, sensing the inevitable, began to abandon him. On the night of December 11th, James made a desperate decision. Disguised as a commoner, he fled London with his wife and infant son. His plan was to escape to France, where his cousin, King Louis XIV, had offered him sanctuary. But the escape was fraught with danger. James was recognized and captured by fishermen in Kent, who initially failed to realize the identity of their royal prisoner. The king's capture was a humiliation, but it also presented a dilemma for William. Having James in custody complicated matters. His presence could rally loyalists and undermine the legitimacy of the revolution. After a brief period of confinement, James was allowed to escape again, this time successfully reaching France. His departure marked the end of his reign, though he would spend the rest of his life plotting to reclaim his throne. The scandal of abdication. With James gone, the question of succession loomed large. William and his wife Mary were the obvious candidates, but the transition of power was far from straightforward. The English Parliament, eager to avoid the appearance of a foreign conquest, insisted on framing James's departure as an abdication. This legal fiction allowed them to declare the throne vacant and offer it to William and Mary as joint monarchs. But the scandals that had fueled the revolution were not easily forgotten. The rumors of the warming pan baby continued to circulate, casting a shadow over the legitimacy of James's son. Supporters of James, known as Jacobites, would use these rumors to justify their efforts to restore the Stuart dynasty in the years to come. For now, however, the nation breathed a sigh of relief. The glorious revolution had succeeded, not through bloody conflict, but through a combination of political maneuvering and popular discontent. Yet the scars of scandal remained, a reminder of the fragile nature of power and the secrets that could bring down a king. The glorious revolution of 1688 had achieved its immediate goal, the removal of King James II from the throne of England. But the aftermath of this seismic event was far from straightforward. The scandals that had fueled the revolution continued to reverberate, shaping the political and social landscape of Britain for decades to come. As William and Mary ascended to the throne, the nation grappled with questions of legitimacy, loyalty, and the price of power. The coronation of William and Mary. On April 11th, 1689, William of Orange and his wife Mary were crowned joint monarchs of England, Scotland, and Ireland in a grand ceremony at Westminster Abbey. The coronation was a moment of triumph for the Protestant cause, but it was also a delicate balancing act. William and Mary had to navigate the expectations of their supporters, while addressing the lingering doubts of those who questioned the legitimacy of their rule. The coronation oath itself was a reflection of the new order. William and Mary pledged to govern according to the laws of Parliament, a significant departure from the absolutist tendencies of James II. This marked the beginning of a constitutional monarchy, where the power of the crown was limited by law and the will of the people. Yet, even as the nation celebrated, the spectre of scandal loomed large. The rumors surrounding the birth of James's son, James Francis Edward Stuart, had not been forgotten. Supporters of the deposed king, known as Jacobites, continued to insist that the child was the rightful heir to the throne. They dismissed the warming pan baby story as a fabrication, a smear campaign orchestrated by William's supporters to justify the revolution. This division between those who accepted the new monarchy and those who remained loyal to the Stuarts would plague Britain for generations. The Jacobite resistance. The Jacobite cause found its strongest support in Scotland and Ireland, where Catholic and Stuart loyalists were numerous. In Ireland, James II had landed in March 1689 with French support, hoping to use the island as a base to reclaim his throne. The ensuing conflict, known as the Williamite War in Ireland, was brutal and bloody. The Battle of the Boyne in July 1690, where William's forces decisively defeated James's army, was a turning point. James fled back to France, his dreams of restoration shattered. But the Jacobite threat did not end there. In Scotland, Scotland, the Highlands became a hotbed of resistance. The Glencoe Massacre of 1692, where members of the MacDonald clan were slaughtered by government troops, was a stark reminder of the tensions that simmered beneath the surface. The massacre was not only a military action, but also a political statement, a warning to those who dared to challenge the new regime. The Jacobite cause would continue to smolder, erupting into open rebellion in 1715 and again in 1745. Each uprising was fueled by the same grievances: the belief that the Stuarts had been wrongfully deposed and that the glorious revolution was built on a foundation of lies and scandal. The legacy of scandal. The scandals that had brought down James II left an indelible mark on British politics and society. The warming pan baby rumour, in particular, became a symbol of the power of propaganda and the fragility of legitimacy. It underscored the importance of public perception in the struggle for power, a lesson that would not be lost on future rulers. The revolution also had profound implications for the relationship between the monarchy and parliament. The Bill of Rights, passed in 1689, enshrined the principles of constitutional monarchy and laid the groundwork for modern democracy. It established that the monarch could not suspend laws, levy taxes, or maintain a standing army without parliamentary consent. These reforms were a direct response to the abuses of James II, but they also reflected a broader shift in the balance of power. Yet, for all its achievements, the Glorious Revolution was not without its contradictions. While it championed the cause of Protestant liberty, it also entrenched religious divisions. Catholics and dissenting Protestants faced continued persecution, and the Test Acts remained in place, barring them from public office. The revolution, for all its talk of freedom, was ultimately a victory for one faction over another. The personal toll. For William and Mary, the revolution came at a personal cost. Mary, who had been torn between loyalty to her father and her husband, relationship with William, already strained by his infidelities, grew increasingly distant. When Mary died of smallpox in 1694, William was left to rule alone, a solitary figure burdened by the weight of his responsibilities. James II, meanwhile, lived out his days in exile at the court of Louis XIV in France. He never gave up hope of reclaiming his throne, but his efforts were in vain. His son, James Francis Edward Stuart, would carry on the Jacobite cause, but the Stuarts would never again rule Britain. The Glorious Revolution had ensured that. A nation transformed. By the turn of the 18th century, Britain had been transformed. The scandals of the Glorious Revolution had reshaped the nation's political landscape, ushering in an era of constitutional monarchy and parliamentary supremacy. Yet, the revolution also left a legacy of division and distrust, a reminder that the pursuit of power is often accompanied by secrets and lies. The story of the Glorious Revolution is not just a tale of political change. It is a story of human ambition, betrayal, and the enduring power of scandal. It is a reminder that history is not always written by the victors, but by those who dare to uncover the truth. And so, the echoes of 1688 continue to resonate, a testament to the enduring power of the past to shape the present.